Earn great returns on your money with the safety and security of a community bank. Bank of Clark is offering 4.85% annual percentage yield on 6-month CDs, 5% APY on 12-month CDs and IRAs, and 4.95% APY on 9-month CDs. Visit your local Bank of Clark branch today or go to bankofclark.bank. We're the bank for that. Member FDIC. Limited time offer. Rate subject to change at any time. Minimum balance of $1,000 on CDs.
This podcast of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs is sponsored by AAA Heating and Air.
The premier HVAC company in the Midlands is growing. Are you a top HVAC technician?
AAA Heating and Air is looking for dedicated applicants to fill their fast-growing service department with top-notch HVAC technicians.
If you're the best, then they want you. If you're ready to stop working and start a career, you can earn up to $100,000 plus a year at AAA Heating and Air.
Quality candidates will have at least 2 years experience and a good driving record. Benefits include top industry salaries, commission on service and unit sales, set call limits, company-provided take-home vehicle and gas card, company-provided cell phone and tablet, health, dental, and vision benefits, 401k retirement plan with company match, and scaled PTO based on length of service.
Contact Roy and Dana Finley at 803-677-1500 or check out their job postings on Facebook or ZipRecruiter.
AAA Air when you need us. AAA Heating and Air.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen. With Chris Clark.
The 2007 South Carolina class was, at that time, 6th in the country and 4th in the SEC, which is amazing.
Wes Mitchell.
You know, I think if you're South Carolina, you're aiming to at least be at 50%. Then in theory, you're adding talent, you're getting better, you're putting yourself in a position to compete.
And Tyler Head.
It's been a great week for South Carolina. On the recruiting front, still certainly plenty to talk about.
On the home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
All right, and welcome into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris broadcasting live at Steelhands Brewing out in Cayce, as we've been doing all morning long. Still got another hour to go. Talked plenty this morning about the the SEC schedule, and just kind of scrolling through Twitter here during one of those last breaks. We're learning more and more about some of these schedule leaks, and I see Bama Online with On 3 is now reporting Georgia going on the road to Tuscaloosa in 2024. So we have for Georgia a road game at Texas and another one at Alabama. Really kind of is a 180 from what the schedule looks like for them this year.
What do you think about that, Tyler? A little more.
I mean, you got to play the best teams, right? You know?
I mean, I think those are super interesting matchups. Anytime you can match up Georgia and Bama.
For sure. And the last time they played was 2020 during the COVID year, so you didn't have the same atmosphere and big deal. And that was, I think Georgia was the only team to lead them at halftime because they went on to win the national championship. So that was just a monster of an Alabama team. So, yeah, very interesting to see that matchup next year. Again, this is being reported by Bama Online with On 3. And I imagine as the day goes along, we'll continue to hear more and more about what the schedule looks like. And then tonight at 7 o'clock, find out who South Carolina's 8 opponents for 2024 are.
The leaks are on. Like, we're getting the steady little leaks of information. The athletic departments know at this point, so it's just a matter of what's going to leak out there and what's not. And then there are certain people, I'm sure, at SEC Network that know or are going to soon know. So, I think, I'm sure they have, it's in their best interest that it doesn't all come out, but I think we'll continue to see some stuff drop throughout the day.
It'll be like one of those things like when they reveal the Final Four for the college football playoff, like, the graphics guy is going to before all of us do, and we're going to react to it in real time.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I was looking earlier, too. The Georgia Rivals site didn't have any hard information, but they did just reiterate that, it's anticipated that each SEC team within this kind of temporary framework for 2024 is going to keep one permanent opponent. And so it's anticipated that Georgia and Florida will play each other there. So now you can really see Georgia starting to take shape, right? Because now you got, at Texas, at Bama, and then the neutral site game with Florida. So they have some compelling matchups.
I imagine, again, like you said, with keeping the one permanent opponent in 24, anticipating that'll move to 3 and 25, you're probably still going to have the Auburn game as well in 24 to keep that going. Again, assuming you're going to be able to lock them in permanently starting in 2025. So that's another piece to that schedule, at least, that most likely will happen.
So that would be 4 of the 8. We'll see. Georgia, South Carolina. Will that be one? We don't quite know yet.
Dude, that's a schedule right there. Like, that is.
Well, they deserve
loaded.
it after this year.
After
what we're seeing this year,
the cakewalk of non-conference this year.
Will Georgia always play Georgia Tech?
Yes, that game's never going away. I can guarantee you that game's never
Why
going
is
away.
that, you think? Like,
just the lineage of the rivalry.
Yeah.
And, it's easy to kind of look at the recency of, well, Georgia Tech's not been very good in the past decade or so, but everything we know, all this ebbs and flows. And, for every time Clemson, wins, 8 against South Carolina, there's a winning streak for South Carolina back in the day, and it goes in cycles. So while it doesn't look good right now, it's not competitive right now, everything's going to come back to being down the road. When that is, I don't know, but yeah, Georgia Tech never going away.
While we're talking about Georgia a little bit, they guys have actually, I don't know how it's fairly recently this might have happened, or maybe they've been there, but just to reset the team recruiting rankings breakdown, Georgia actually number 1 there right now. They've been on a little bit of a hot streak, 19 total commitments, a pair of 5 stars, 12 4-stars in that. Gamecocks, who have been in the top 10 for months, Wes? They've been up there for quite a while. They are now number 8. They've been, I think, 7. They've been 6. Right now sitting at number 8. 10 total commitments. And just to remind people that the On3 team recruiting rankings, the industry ranking, it utilizes a weighted average of all 4 major recruiting services. And at last check, also really only counted the top 6 commitments right now in the formula. They change that. They vary that from time to time, just so that schools that have 20 commitments aren't seeing their class inflated versus ones that have maybe 10 or so. But South Carolina's still in the top 10, and there's a lot still going on in the recruiting world for them.
Well, and that number that it's based on, I believe, Chris, is based on the national average of number of commits.
Yes.
is what it sort of drives that number. So, it's based on average, but you can't, just having 1 4-star, that'd be a great average, or 1 5-star even, that'd be a great average. That doesn't get you in the top 10, but also you don't get juiced into the top 6 by having 25 3-stars before anybody else has 5 commits, basically, which I think was a little bit of the problem with some of the way that rankings used to be done, was that the number really sort of maybe inflated some of the rankings early on. Now for South Carolina, in order to stay top 5, even top 10, you're going to have to continue to hit on the same average that you did. I mean, obviously, you had Mason Love. He was number 10. He's not going to be ranked as far as you're a traditional prospect because he's a punter. But, 8 of the first 9, so 8 of the first 10 now as well, are 4-star guys. So if you're Carolina, you're going to have to keep hitting on highly rated guys. That was the one question we get, I feel like, pretty often. Can South Carolina maintain a top 5 ranking? Can they maintain a top 10 ranking? I have said for a while, just based on the competition, just based on the number of highly rated guys are going to be in your classes in the top 5, I think it's going to be difficult for South Carolina to end in the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
I think top 10, however, is very doable. Now, you're going to have to hit on some guys, especially some of these players that are going to be in towards the end of June. You start talking about a Dylan Stewart, obviously. That gives you, a 5-star is obviously going to bring a lot of weight to an average. Jonathan Paylor is a 4-star guy. Daniel Hill is a 4-star guy. You go to this past week, you're going to be able to potentially land some guys that will not necessarily boost the ranking, but won't hurt the ranking either. A Fred Johnson is, a mid to high 3-star guy. If you add him, you look at the potential. I know Chris put in a prediction for Keelan Adams. He's a 4-star guy that would be right along the lines of what their current average is. I think the current average is right around 92 rating. I think Adams is a 91.85764. Like, it's somewhere in there. Yeah, so he's going to be right along what that average is. Daniel Hill, 4-star, I don't know what his rating is off the top of my head, but there will be a chance for South Carolina to continue to sort of stay at that average that it's going to take in order to be a top 10 class for 2024.
Yeah, and that's something that we've talked about is like they didn't exhaust the quality of their class early, right? They didn't land all of the targets that are highly ranked that they had a chance to early. They obviously have done quite well for themselves in terms of some quality on the front end of the class. Now the pool has narrowed, Wes. Like we're seeing more and more guys that are targets, including guys that South Carolina's offered, committing elsewhere. Some have committed to Georgia recently. You think of Justin Green, the edge out of Georgia. Jordan Thomas from New Jersey committed to Georgia recently. Cam Fountain commits to Southern Cal. Jarvis Boatwright, a DB from Florida, commits to Southern Cal. So the pool has narrowed some, but there's still enough out there. A lot of the guys that you mentioned, Wes, are in that mix. You know, Dylan Stewart's a 5-star. That's probably their only realistic shot with a 5-star in this class. But a lot of the other targets are 4-star types, and they're in the game or even lead outright for some of those guys. But to maintain this class ranking, more importantly, just to add really good players to the class, right? That's even more important than the ranking. They are going to have to increase the hit rate going forward in this stretch run of the recruiting process.
And given that the on-3 rankings are kind of a little bit more cumulative, how much fluctuation do we typically see? And again, it's in June now, so we're 8 months or whatever it is away from the official National Signing Day in February. How much fluctuation do we usually see over that course of time with these rankings?
It just depends, I think, man. I'm sure there are schools that maybe have 5 guys committed right now, and then they just may be poised to go on a massive run. They may not even be in the top 15 right now, and a lot of time it just depends on timing, I feel like, of when the prospects want to commit. So you're going to see some guys, you're going to see some teams go on runs. You'll see a couple teams fall off if they can't keep their current pace, obviously. So, you know, for the most part, Georgia, they're going to be a top 3 class. Alabama's going to be a top 3. I don't see that changing a ton. But so I would say some fluctuation, but for most of the teams, probably not a ton. Yeah. But again, for Carolina, it's going to depend on. I just looked it up. Daniel Hill, 91.39 rating. So that's right along the lines of where they're going to have to stay.
Well, and a lot of the schools that tend to do well, and if you check the rankings at an early point in the cycle, which this wouldn't qualify. I mean, it's still early. It's not super early. But if you look at those schools and you look at the top 5, especially with how On3 does their rankings, where they don't weight it just, a school that has 20 commitments and 18 of them are 3 stars and they're in the top 10. That doesn't really make sense. The way On3 does it, to me, makes a lot more sense. But Georgia and Ohio State and Bama and Clemson, right, they're generally going to be in the top 10, 15. If they're outside of it, they're not staying there for long. They're going to be there early and they're going to be there late, right? I think your outliers and more of your question marks are schools like South Carolina, honestly, because historically they're falling somewhere between, I don't know, what's fair, Wes? Help me out, 15 to 25, let's call it that. They're not typically in the top 10.
Right.
We've only seen that in the .com era. I think there's been one top 10 finish, the one that opens our show, the 2007 class, which is right where they were. Now they're in the top 10, but they're more of a question mark, right, of whether or not they stay. Georgia's going to finish in the top. They might finish number 1. They might finish 3. Notre Dame, Michigan, they're probably going to be up there. LSU. But there's some outliers in these rankings of guys like, for instance, Texas A&M. Right now they only have 6 commitments and 3 4-stars. They're probably going on a run, whether that's a bunch of 4 stars, a 5 or 2. Oklahoma only has 6 commitments. So, their quality, they have 4 4-stars out of those 6. They're poised to add more numbers, yes, but more importantly, more quality. So that's a couple of the teams, maybe you throw Auburn in there, that have a shot to kind of close strong in these next few months and potentially jump up. But a lot of the schools that are already in the top 10 are probably staying there.
Right. We'll continue talking about recruiting, including one of the members of the 2024 class heading to a pretty elite camp coming up this weekend. But first, as always, want to let you know about the sub of the day at Firehouse Subs.
Today is Wednesday, last I checked.
Correct.
Which is, Chris is looking at me like, I think it's Wednesday.
It is Wednesday.
It is Wednesday.
But I can tell you that is New York Steamer, which on my power rankings, personal power rankings, is, yes, number one at this point. That used to not be the case because I had never had it before. It quickly rose from unranked, you would say, to 5-star, top of the power rankings. And that means today I could go to Firehouse Subs. Actually, when I leave here, Chris, I could punch it in on my phone on the Firehouse Subs app, and they would have a $7.99 sub of the day New York Steamer waiting for me on the shelf. If I wanted to get the small, I could get that for $5.99, but I would never actually do that. Medium, $7.99. There's a sub of the day every single day at Firehouse Subs, firehousesubs.com, or the app, Rapid Rescue. By far the easiest, most efficient way to get yourself hooked up with a Firehouse Subs. Again, shout out, as always, to our man Larry for being our primary presenting sponsor right here on the GC Takeover Hour. It is almost lunchtime, so go get yourself a Firehouse Sub.
All right, more camp talk up next on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs.
Does an orthopedic condition or sports injury have you sidelined? Make your comeback with GW Hospital Sports Medicine. We offer services from neck to toe, including care for shoulders, hips, knees, ankles, and hands. Plus, we're the official healthcare partner of GW Athletics, the DC Furies, and the DC Revolution. Get back to doing the things you love. Learn more at gwhospital.com/sportsmed or call 888-4GW-DOCS. Physicians are not employees or agents of this hospital.
On 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head. On your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
Firehouse Subs here on 107.5 The Game. Tyler, West, and Chris broadcasting live out at Steelhands Brewing here in Cayce. Steelhands being one of the many members of the 107.5 The Game Craft Beer Passport. If you head on over to 107.5thegame.com and click on the Sweet Deals tab, you can buy yourself the Craft Beer Passport for just $99. In total, it's a $285 value. Again, good at over 15 different locations around the Midlands, including Steelhands Brewing. So don't miss your chance to pick up the Craft Beer Passport today on 107.5thegame.com. I talked about this before the break. Obviously, we're in the middle of the camp season as the summer rolls along. Had a couple of the Shane Beamer football camps going on these past couple Fridays. This upcoming weekend is the Elite 11 camp out in Los Angeles, and a member of South Carolina's 2024 class, quarterback Dante Reno, will be one of the 20 members taking part in that this weekend.
Yeah, awesome opportunity for Dante. I mean, anytime you get invited out there to the Elite 11 finals, that's just the invite says something about you, something you never forget. I'm sure if you're Dante, Dante, of course, is very excited about it and has said, hey, I grew up watching, paying attention to this thing, dreaming of being an Elite 11 quarterback. So basically they have regional camps all over. You perform well there, you get invited to the finals. Clearly there's 20 guys, as Tyler said, out there, and then they will whittle it down. It's like a 3-day competition. Some on-field stuff, some actually classroom stuff as well. That's a big part of it. But then after that, they will announce what is truly the Elite 11, the top 11 quarterbacks in the country. And Chris, I believe in the past they've even put out official lists at the end of each day, if I remember correctly. I know at times they've done that where it's like, hey, here's how things stack up
kind
right
of top
now.
Guys, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm very curious. That starts today. Very curious to see what the feedback is on how Dante performs. And he's good in these settings, man. I don't know what all they are going to ask him to do. Certainly you'd imagine one of these 5-star guys is going to, quote, win it, is going to be number one. I think who's the Florida kid, DJ Lagway? Is that?
Yeah.
Is that,
and he's real good.
He's a big-name guy that big-armed is going to, blow everybody away, I feel like, in the measurables categories. So, it'll be interesting because I don't know if this is necessarily a marquee year for the quarterback position. I mean, I think a Lenora Sellers could probably, if he was still in school, which age-wise he actually could have been a 24 guy, I think this would have been an opportunity for him to go out there and really show out. But as far as Dante goes, spins the ball very well, is your new age quarterback that can throw it from the different arm slots. He works on that quite a bit. I don't know how much of the training and the evaluation that will be out there for this, but I expect a good showing from Dante. Now, everybody out there is obviously pretty good if you're a top 20 quarterback in the country.
You are, yeah. And I think there's some guys out there that are really interesting. I mean, all of them are, right? I mean, Dylan Raiola, who's, I think On3 has him as the top quarterback in the country, Wes, committed to Georgia. He's one that'll be a really, really interesting player. Georgia actually has Ryan Puglisi from up north out there as well. DJ Lagway from Texas, who's committed to Florida, as you said, Wes. The one that I'm kind of interested in, just from an observer standpoint, is Jaden Davis from Charlotte. He got invited out there, the Michigan commitment. I know Rivals has him ranked as a 5-star, and I think the number one quarterback. And me personally, I'm not sure that will hold. The Elite 11 is a really good opportunity for the guys that actually do the rankings, to see some of these players and check them out. But really cool honor for Dante that he can go out there and see how he stacks up against that competition. He'll be someone that, we frequently get that question, hey, would a guy like Dante Reno have an opportunity to move up some? Because if you look at On3's individual rankings, Wes, correct me if I'm wrong on this, he's a little bit lower than some of the other services, right? They still like him. We've talked to Charles Power, who's their director of scouting and rankings, about Dante, and he's pointed out some of the things that he likes about Dante, specifically his very, very quick release. But this might be an opportunity for him to showcase his talent stacked up against some of these other guys.
Dude, I think this is actually, you want to talk about the team rankings for South Carolina and ways to move up, or really ways to remain in that top 10 as other schools are adding prospects as well. If we kind of tie this entire conversation together, by the way, Chris, I did confirm, so as of today, the average number of commits in the country for 2024 class, so the reason I'm pointing that out is that's the number that are actually factored into the team recruiting rankings right now, is 9.
Oh, it's 9 now.
Yeah, okay. So it's jumped up to 9. There's been some movement, obviously, this June push we see around the country now. So that number's up to 9. So if you're South Carolina, you have 8 4-stars and a 3-star that are contributing to that ranking. Well, Dante Reno is a 4-star for that ranking because that's based on On3 consensus. That is the weighted average of the 4. However, as much as we have seen On3 be higher on a lot of South Carolina commits than you've seen with other companies, in the case of Dante, On3 is kind of the outlier really compared to all the other 3. And they have Dante as an 88 rating, which for those who don't really follow it closely, a 90 rating is the 4-star threshold. So if you look at the On3 industry rankings, he is a 4-star guy. If you look at the individualized On3 rankings, he is a high 3-star. And Chris, number 44 quarterback in the country.
Yeah.
You look at, I'll go ahead and list them off. 24/7, number 17 quarterback. ESPN, number 10 quarterback. Rivals, number 19 quarterback. So really a true outlier in the case here. But what does that mean, man? I think you're going to see, and Charles is a guy, he doesn't go into these things with preconceived notions. He's not going to go out there and say, well, man, I have him as 44. I want to be right. I think a real opportunity for Dante to go out there and move up in the On3 part of the rankings, which then would add to Dante's overall rating, average, and could potentially help hold up this class as well.
Yeah, we'll keep this conversation about Dante Reno coming up on the other side. But as always, want to thank our friends over at Amy Mason Cup State Farm for being great supporters of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour.
Yeah, when my family was looking to switch and save our insurance, first we were looking to save. Wanted great insurance, wanted to look at saving. Talked to our friends at Amy Mason Cup State Farm, and it was apparent that we needed to switch. So that's exactly what we did. We called up Amy Mason Cup State Farm. Her team was able to take care of the rest. They actually have something else really cool that they can tell you about, and that is the Drive Safe and Save app from State Farm. has some cool features, dynamic features like interactive maps and driving tips that make the pursuit of your discount on your insurance bill even easier. You can earn up to 30% just downloading the Drive Safe and Save app from State Farm to get started. So if you want more information on how to get started with that, you can visit amymasoncup.com. That's Amy's website, Amy, MASINCUPP.com, or you can give her a call, 803-772-5554. Now, if you're in the car right now listening to the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour here on 107.5 The Game, maybe you're on I-26, stop off St. Andrews Road exit, right off the St. Andrews Road exit, 612 St. Andrews Road, Suite 4, Columbia. That's Amy Mason Cup's office. That's in Ashland Park Plaza. So any of your insurance needs, home, auto, business, boat, life, anything that you need from an insurance standpoint, Amy Mason Cup State Farm has you covered. South Carolina native and a local agent that can give you a personalized quote to meet your needs and help you save. AmyMasonCup.com, 803-772-5554. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
All right, more on Dante Reno coming up next on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. 107.5.
Michael J. for Hope for the Warriors. Started back in 2006 at Camp Lejeune. Military families witnessing the effects of war on their loved ones. Now, almost 20 years later, they've aided over 53,000 service members, veterans, and families with confidential, high-quality behavioral health care services at little or no cost to post 9/11 vets and their families. Over 91% of every dollar donated goes directly to the programs. If you're as concerned about our heroes as I am, go to hopeforthewarriors.org.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
All right, and welcome back into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on 107.5 The Game. Tyler, West, and Chris broadcasting live out at Steelhands Brewing here in Cayce. We'll remind you once again about the 2024 SEC scheduling contest going until 6 o'clock tonight on 107.5thegame.com. If you can pick the most correct of South Carolina's 8 upcoming opponents for the 2024 schedule, you'll win yourself some tickets to South Carolina's home opener versus Furman coming up on September the 9th, as well as a 107.5 The Game prize pack. Again, that contest runs until 6 o'clock tonight on 107.5thegame.com, and that schedule will be revealed on the SEC Network tonight at 7 o'clock. Jumping back into the conversation we were having about Dante Reno going to the Elite 11 camp this upcoming weekend. He's also going to be on that list of guys coming in for the official visits next weekend on campus, as well as several of the commits with the 2024 class. Whether he makes the final 11 this weekend or not, just going to the Elite 11 this upcoming weekend, how significant is that with it being the weekend before he's going to be on campus with some other recruits?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dante already had quite a bit of juice, is the way I would say it, with prospects. You know, I think they know he's big time. Anybody that's gone out there and thrown with him, you know, he's been on campus with a bunch of these guys before, and on camp days last year, was in for a camp day this year and went out there, has thrown with Mazia Bennett, has thrown with Keelan Adams, who's a major target, and, you know, you would say probably heavy Gamecock lean. So they already know, but I mean, yeah, it gives you a little bit more credibility. I think it doesn't hurt by any means. And so I think it's good, and I mean, you can guarantee, so we can go ahead and look ahead. No official visit, kind of big weekend this weekend. We've told people that all leading up to it, Chris. You got 3 major weekends. They've completed 2, maybe saving the best for last, I would say, in terms of, I mean, this thing is set up perfectly, dude. I can almost promise there's probably some names that will be added to this list before then. There's maybe even some names internally that have been added that we're maybe catching up on. I would kind of anticipate that potentially. But, dude, look at it. It's the entire committed group except for, obviously, Michael Smith already took his this past week, and now Mason Love was not committed before that. But now, you know, he's among the 10 who are committed and obviously has already taken his. But you're going to have all these guys that are committed, and we've talked about it a ton. This is the most high-energy class I will say we've ever seen at South Carolina in terms of putting effort into making other guys feel comfortable and kind of recruiting them to join them at South Carolina. You're going to put Dante, head recruiter A,
Cam Pringle, head recruiter A part 2, then Mazio. You know, you're going to put all these guys on campus at one time with Dylan Stewart, Daniel Hill, Jonathan Paylor, 3 of your just priority top guys. Now, Jordan Thomas just committed to Georgia. He was on the list for that week. Chris, always thought it was going to be difficult for South Carolina to really gain enough traction. They had traction, don't get me wrong, to actually land him. Once Jimmy Lindsey left, and you're talking about some changeover at that position, Georgia getting highly involved, you know, so scratch that. But 3 are just your top priorities coming in with 8 committed guys. That sets up, I think, incredibly well for South Carolina.
Yeah, and to go back to Dante for just a second, and then, you know, to bring it forward to the recruiting weekend, I actually got to watch him, Wes, during that camp. And was that I can't remember if that was the first time I'd seen him throw in person. I feel like it was probably the second time. Might have seen him in another camp setting previously.
Come on, this year? You saw him?
Yep.
This month?
Yep, June 2nd.
I saw him throw last June. I don't know if you were at that one or not, but it was
that's what I'm thinking.
Him and Jaden Davis. No, him and Jaden Bradford both threw side by side at camp last year.
I did see that. Okay. But, you know, came away, I mean, similar thoughts. I mean, the big thing that everybody is going to point out about Dante, whether you're watching the film, whether you're watching camp footage or sitting there watching him in person, an incredibly quick release, just like a very compact release. And I think that's a big, you know, checkbox for him. I think he threw the ball well from what I saw. I didn't get a chance to watch him work out or throw it extensively. It was more of him taking turns with a bunch of the other quarterbacks that were there, just kind of throwing routes to some guys. And that can be hit or miss based on some of the routes you get and things like that. But, yeah, I mean, he's got size. He's an intelligent guy. And certainly when you look at he's got requisite arm strength. He can put some zip on the ball, some touch on the ball, and then the really quick release. But I think that personality that Wes was talking about, this has always been a guy that as soon as he jumped in, he has been very invested in the class. He's always asking the coaching staff or even people who follow Gamecock recruiting kind of what's going on and passing information back and forth. So he's really, really invested in it, which is really cool to see. And there are a bunch of others that are like that, like Wes pointed out. I mean, Cam Pringle's been one. Kelvin Hunter's been one on social media. He'll be in that weekend. So I'm with you, Wes. I am very interested to see, just like it happened last weekend. You remember we start getting more, we know the baseline of guys that are going to be there. Then we start getting more and more names. Who else besides those 3 uncommitted significant targets is going to be added? I would have to think there's some on the way.
I got a feeling there'll maybe be 1 or 2 highly recruited guys that potentially get added. Then I think there'll maybe be a couple more just kind of your 3-star types that they've been kind of maybe quietly working. This year, or excuse me, this time of year is when you kind of, I feel like, get a true feel for maybe not where the board is specifically, like who's above who, but there's mutual interest if an official visit is taking place. So I feel like the board's starting to kind of shape out this time of year, especially now the way things are sort of scheduled out. And so I did a little bit more research, y'all, about this class and top 10 and what it's going to take to be there. Not that this is like a perfect way to do it, but it is, I think, a great guideline. So last year, the number 10 class in the country on 3 rankings, Notre Dame, they had 23 commits, and that was an average rating of 91.44. So, you know, you kind of look at 90 as being like, as far as the on 3 rankings, that's kind of the threshold for 4-star, 3-star. The on 3 industry ranking, the average, it goes actually, it's like 89 point something is kind of 4-star, I guess. But point being, that's sort of what you're generally looking at. Can you maintain that rating, probably beat it by a little bit to be a top 10 class? And for South Carolina right now, the latest average rating they have, 90.54. So at one point it was 92, but again, we talked about it earlier. You're pulling from a different number of prospects that are in there, and you've kind of added some guys as it's going on. Point being, if Dante sees his rating go up a bit after Elite 11, that number potentially rises. all the guys we're talking about right now, though, check in with ratings currently above that number. So Daniel Hill, 91.39. Dylan Stewart, 98.37 as a 5-star. Jonathan Paylor, 91.62. So I know typically I try to stay away from numbers on the radio. It's not necessarily easy listening, but hopefully that did give everybody a little bit of an idea of what it's going to take to sort of maintain this current top 10 threshold as the class continues.
And then one more quick question on that, Wes. If you have this in front of you, how many, what did the number of commits that they ended up using in their formula for last year's class? You gave the Notre Dame average of being in the top 10.
Yeah, so that was their average. They had 23, and
23.
Surprisingly, the number's lower than I thought it would be.
As far as what they factored in?
Yeah.
Can I take a stab?
Yeah.
15.
19.
I was going to say 19 first. I should have said that. 15's way too low.
Yeah, so 19 is the average number of commits that would be used in the rankings score. So that kind of gives you, hopefully that gets translated over the radio. I don't know if it does, but hopefully it does.
And one more quick note, Tyler, before I kick it back to you.
Yep.
Look at Dylan Stewart. Right now he's a 5-star on the industry ranking. He's not a 5-star plus, which is a consensus 5-star. Only one service has him right outside. ESPN has him number 19 nationally, which is somehow still a 4-star. Kind of weird, right? Because you look at Rivals, they got him 17, 5-star.
He's got to be right on the threshold.
He's got to be right on the threshold. So if he gets bumped up by ESPN at some point and he stays a 5-star in the other services, he would get that 5-star plus designation.
He just got bumped on Rivals.
He did
to
just
a
get
5-star. So he's
so
7.
It could happen.
He's 7 nationally in the On3 industry ranking, which again is the weighted average. That's a little bit higher than he was, I think. Yep. Or is that the same?
I think it's a little bit higher.
A little bit better.
After Rivals bumped him up. So
yeah, number 2 edge prospect.
He's got a chance to be a 5-star plus, which could further bolster, if South Carolina landed him, of course, could even further bolster that ranking.
Again, we're broadcasting live out here at Steelhands Brewing in Cayce for a few more minutes. Before we hit this next break, though, as always, want to thank one of our newest additions to the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, that being Gold Line Framing.
We're in Cayce right now, which means we're very, very close to West Columbia, South Carolina, which is where our friends at Gold Line Framing are. If you're looking for that special gift, for that special graduate in your life, look no further than our friends at Gold Line Framing. Again, West Columbia. Owner Kendall Walsh and manager Joni James, they're going to take care of you and any and all of your custom framing needs. That could be a diploma. That could be an original artwork, canvases, jerseys, flags. Maybe you want to print out the new 2024 schedule that is released today and put it on some gloss and then go have it framed and hang it on your wall so you can look at it every single day. They can do that for you as well. They've been in business for over 20 years. Head on over to 511 12th Street. Again, West Columbia. Check out their art gallery, home decor, furniture, gift items in store. If you have any questions, just give them a call. 803-739-1337. Open Tuesday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Then on Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. They are also on Instagram, y'all. You can get a view of some of the great stuff they have going on at Goldline Framing SC. Again, Goldline Framing, West Columbia, South Carolina.
There's a controversial figure coming to prominence in the sports world. We'll talk about him next to close out the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5 The Game.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs. Founded by firemen with Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, and Tyler Head on your home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
Man, it's like TMZ News, dude. It's a new era, it's a new generation. The people that are normally jealous of us is kind of older. They just don't get it. The times have changed, dude. Elon Musk about to move us to Mars. It's just the internet is where it's at, and all I did was made him a platform. So if he tears an ACL or he doesn't make it in football, which is hard to make the NFL, at least he has, all this other money to start a company or be a part of several companies by the time he's a senior. The goal is to be a millionaire by senior year with football or without football.
Welcome back into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, West, and Chris broadcasting live at Steelhands Brewing out in Cayce. That was the voice of, I don't even know the guy's real name, Baby Gronk's dad. And for those that aren't familiar, Baby Gronk is I guess social media sensation is the right way to put it right now, that's gaining a lot of attention, both good and bad. He's like a 10-year-old kid who's got this highlight tape of him being good at Pee Wee football, essentially, and his dad is doing everything he can to market this kid as the next big thing. And in my opinion, he's getting himself into the category of Todd Marinovich's dad, as bad sports dads of all time. And that was just a little clip of his philosophy on dealing with his son.
Yeah, I mean that was the least cringeworthy thing he said. I feel like if you go, have y'all watched the most recent interview that came out?
Yeah. Where he's feeding him the lines on the podcast.
Y'all know in the Scott's Tots episode of Michael Scott, the just amount of secondhand embarrassment you can feel from watching that.
Sure.
That's the way I felt watching the Baby Gronk interview, and the dad. Every time the kid, I feel bad for the kid.
Oh, yeah, this isn't his fault.
The kid gives just an honest kid answer. And considering, he's on a microphone, he's got all these people, gives a perfectly fine answer.
Sure.
And every time the dad cuts him off, hey, ask the question again, tells him what to say, and then stages the answers with just cringeworthy answers. But the whole thing, the way it just makes you feel very uncomfortable. And they're putting, I get trying to build the kid a following, I guess, but y'all, we have all, if you played sports growing up, you all either played with or against the kid who was further ahead in his physical development than everybody else. And you as a kid thought, I remember, I can still see this kid in my head right now. There's a kid I used to face, I was like, oh, that guy's going to be pitching in MLB one day because he threw so hard at the time. I played a guy in All-Stars one time that literally I think hit 4 home runs in the same game.
Yep. You're like, oh yeah, that guy's pro for sure.
I was like, remember that guy. He's going to be... But then everything starts to even out. And one take I've seen online, looking at the kid's dad, I don't know if he hit the DNA lotto.
Yeah, his dad's like 5'6".
So... You're not. I don't know, man. I feel bad for Baby Gronk when it evens out. Like maybe the dad's right. Maybe his son's gonna be a star. But no. He's 10 years old. No college coach is gonna want to, for one, deal with his dad in the first place.
There's no chance.
And are they talking about skipping middle school and high school football? Is that like that? That was thrown out there. Surely that's not really going to be the case. But they have talked about that.
They're doing a lot of things, and they're posting these pictures of him going on official visits where he's putting on the uniforms at North Carolina and Missouri and all these places. It's a social media stunt at this point. Yeah. And the point that his defense in all this was, on that little clip from TMZ there, was, in case he doesn't end up making, I'm trying to make him all the money that I can, until he's a senior in high school or whatever, so he can be set for life or whatever it may be. That's a pretty weak justification in my opinion, because it seems like he's exploiting the kid more than anything else.
Yeah, this dad, he makes LeVar Ball look like
Danny Tanner.
That is I kept trying to think of just like a very even keel, reasonable person. That's a really good one. He's talking about feeding the kid. He's on a salmon and brown rice diet. Yeah. Dude, a 10-year-old needs to be eating bags of chips and Airheads.
It's literally the Todd Marinovich thing where, when he was 17, this kid's never eaten a Big Mac or had an Oreo cookie, and was taking his own cake to kids' birthday parties. Because, again, from the beginning, he was born and bred to be an NFL quarterback. He made it there, didn't go very far after that, and that's kind of the same situation going on with Baby Gronk.
Yeah, what if
I'm just picturing him taking his flourless protein cake to
some kid's like, what is that? Oh, it's my flourless protein cake.
That's my zucchini avocado cake.
Oh, yeah. That's. I probably didn't have anything extreme, very valuable to say other than. I feel bad for the kid, and you see a lot of the sports writers. The Athletic actually did a profile on Baby Gronk, and actually they got some pushback on that. But this guy is sliding, this guy being the dad, he's sliding into every sports writer's DMs, trying to get him to do profiles.
Even the ones that don't cover football or recruiting or anything like hey, I know you guys talk about this other thing, but we'd love to come on your podcast or whatever.
Yeah.
So he's great. He's really grasping at straws here.
Wes, have you gotten a DM from Baby Gronk's dad yet?
Nah.
I have not either.
I can say I think we'll turn down the request to have him on the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Personally.
Yeah, I won't
Probably.
no part.
Maybe there's a press conference question in there for Shane Beamer. Pete Limbo, would you ever consider recruiting Baby Gronk? He could technically talk about him. Can't talk about him.
Can't comment on him.
Yeah, even if he's 10 years old.
Is the word / name Gronk not potentially how are you even using that name?
I know if I was Rob Gronkowski, I probably wouldn't be. I'd be
is Baby Gronk.
And that's the funny thing going back to his overall size, because Gronk's,
a giant,
this monster of a guy, and this kid, again, will be lucky to hit.
He's big for his age, right?
Big for his age,
right
sure,
now.
Yeah, and that's probably why he's dominating rec league football at this point. When everything evens out and he gets into high school, I don't think it's going to be the same story.
No, it's not. But he's not playing high school ball, Tyler.
Apparently not. No, he's just he's gonna be the first ever 12-year-old drafted in the NFL, I guess. But
this does not end well. I think we can all.
Yeah. And again, it's not the kid's fault.
No. I feel awful for the kid, man. Honestly, it's not his fault whatsoever. I've never seen the national sports community more together with an opinion on a matter than this. This is uniting.
Unified.
Yeah, unified voice against Baby Gronk's dad.
Baby Gronk, real name Madden San Miguel, has another 8 years before he gets to college. So I'm sure we'll be hearing plenty about him between now and then, but it's definitely a sports story that's garnering a lot of attention, at least as of right now. That'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Been broadcasting live out at Steelhands Brewing. We certainly thank them for allowing us to be out here. Halftime show with Jay and Terry coming up next. 107.5 The Game.
Earn great returns on your money with the safety and security of a community bank. Bank of Clark is offering 4.85% annual percentage yield on 6-month CDs, 5% APY on 12-month CDs and IRAs, and 4.95% APY on 9-month CDs. Visit your local Bank of Clark branch today or go to bankofclark.bank. We're the bank for that. Member FDIC. Limited time offer. Rate subject to change at any time. Minimum balance of $1,000 on CDs.